I think we're ready to roll. We've just been waiting to bring people in, and welcome everybody. I just want to spend time like scrolling through all the faces. And originally we're like, maybe we should just turn the videos off, but I can't do that. I want to see everyone. So welcome everyone to our Green Apron Alliance Inspired Stories event. It's such an honor to have all of you carve time out of your day to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. And I'm super excited about the program that we have ahead. For those of you whom I haven't met, and there's probably a few in here, I'm Christine McHugh. I was a Starbucks partner from 1989 to 2017. So 27 years, more than half my life. But I know I haven't aged a bit, so that's what you're all supposed to say. And I'm also the president of the board of the Green Apron Alliance. Marie enrolled me in this awesome opportunity last year, and I'm really proud of all the progress that we've made the last 6 months, particularly as we became an official nonprofit, formed a board, task forces, and it's led to opportunities to bring people together like this. We want to thank those of you who completed the survey that we did earlier this year. It gave us some really great insights on how we want to continue to shape and build out our programming, and actually was a huge influence on today's event. And we are still working through our finalizing our program planning for the year. While I'm mentioning events, we do have events scheduled each Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific for the rest of this month. And we will be profiling topics around, one is what is your pivot? Another week it'll be navigating the job market, and then we're going to have an executive insights forum at the end of the month. So you can find all the information on this on our Green Apron Alliance platform. We're actually trying to figure out what to call it. So if anybody has ideas, let us know. It's not a website. One of our team members suggested it's the connection engine, which is really what we want it to do. But if you have other ideas, please let us know, and make sure you get in and fill out your profile, because it's really going to be the place of where we can all come together. I think that's it for logistics, and we're going to start the panel here in a few minutes, but first we're going to actually have a coffee tasting led by Rachel Maxwell. And I have a quick story about Rachel. So Rachel and I met when she was a shift supervisor at University Village. And I remember, I don't even know how many years ago that was, I remember sitting on the floor of the back room with her while I was either on a holiday helper shift.
Yep, holiday helper.
Okay, holiday helper shift, and Rachel was giving me a lot of work to do. And we just started geeking out on lean. And I think I was the director on the lean team at that point in time. And we just formed a connection. I was like inspired by her inquisitive nature, her energy, her intelligence, and we stayed in touch. And then she ended up getting a job at the SSC as a coordinator, and then eventually became a coordinator on my team. And then went on to actually have a pretty impressive career at Starbucks as an analyst and a manager within the contact center and also facilities. And now she's a program manager at Amazon. So great success story of somebody coming up through the stores and able to go build this career for herself. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Rachel, to lead us in our first ever global coffee tasting.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, I actually got the Facebook notification just yesterday that exactly 6 years ago yesterday, I got the job offer to be a coordinator at corporate with Starbucks. So 6 years ago, I was mopping floors in our store. So it's great timing. So welcome everybody. It's fantastic getting to see some of your faces again. I am new to the Green Apron Alliance, and this is my very first virtual coffee tasting ever. So bear with me as we do this virtual style. For anybody who has their coffee cup with them, please raise and cheers for a hot second. Let's see how many people are bravely drinking coffee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Great job. We'll love to see those addicts. We have Italian Via is what I am drinking today. And this has an interesting story. So my favorite coffee has always been Ethiopian Harar, and then Guatemala. and Columbia. But my wife started doing shopping on the way home from work down at Woodland Park Zoo when COVID started to happen. And she brought home Italian because Columbia was sold out, and it became my new favorite. And so Italian has been the only coffee that I've been drinking every single morning during this COVID period in my life. And so it ties everything together because it's nice and bold but sweet and new and unique, and I think that explains where we are in the current state of things. And so I would love to join or ask you to join me and put some comments in here with what is your new moment of joy in your day. We're all making new habits. We're building relationships in different ways. We have to work with each other virtually in most cases, and our entire lives have been flipped upside down due to this new situation we're all in. So if you could join me in putting in here, being home to see my kids, love it. Your moment of joy, that'd be really fantastic. So for anybody who also has Italian, let's go ahead and take a little sniff. Getting some sweetness, caramel, a little bit of chocolate. I saw this goes really well with the Girl Scout cookie Samoas, which just made me want Girl Scout cookies really bad. Awesome, go ahead and take a little slurp. Anybody not on mute, I expect to hear you. That's right, that's right, high expectations. Good job. Chris, I think that was you. Plus 5 points.
Good slurp.
Great slurp. Yeah, so I was with Starbucks for 11 years. I started as a barista in Tucson, Arizona in 2004. I came back to the company in around, don't even remember what year it was, but I came back as a barista at the University Village store and then met Christine shortly after I had been promoted to being a shift supervisor. And I've really always had a wonderful spot in my heart for the culture, the mission, the values, and took an opportunity on a team of Starbuckians at Amazon and just opened the first Go grocery store. And the scope that I have right now is very similar to what an OCM would do. But my long-term vision is to go back to Starbucks one day. So I'm enjoying my growth journey at this moment, and then hope to find myself back at Starbucks in a couple of years.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for volunteering to do the coffee tasting. When I texted Rachel and asked her if she would be open, she was like immediately replied. I know she has a passion for coffee. I'll never forget the coffee tasting she did for me when she was interviewing for a job on my team. It blew my mind. And so I always have this memory of Rachel not just loving people and loving the work, but really having a love for the product. So cheers to you. And thank you. And I'll turn it over to Marty, I believe.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are around the world right now. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to see you. It's so great to be back in touch with you again, be reconnected. My name is Marty Fisher. I was the Director of Retail Learning and the Director of Culture and Partner Engagement over the 8 years that I was a proud Starbucks partner. I'm thrilled to be the moderator of our 4 May We Move Forward Inspired Stories webcasts. Today we're featuring a panel discussion with 5 of the most fascinating, accomplished professionals and true caring partners that I know. We'll be hearing from a former Bill Clinton White House staff member who's now the CEO of a senior living organization, an original part-time floating barista. Now that's a vision that I have, floating barista, who's built an impressive retail and beauty business in China. 2 former marketing and packaged goods executives who've joined forces years later are now building a joint venture. and a successful supply chain exec who left Starbucks and now has the Siren as a key customer. This is the reunion that I've been looking forward to for a really long time. In today's uncertain world, the human connection is more important than ever. Over the past few months, many of us have reprioritized what's important in our lives. And for me, at least, I've needed my family and trusted friends and colleagues more than ever. The formation of the Green Apron Alliance gives us this opportunity to get the band back together again. But the cool thing is, it's not just the same old band that we're playing our greatest hits over and over again. Instead, it's really a rare chance to bring in new instruments and new sounds for people we didn't even know, but already also have experienced our culture and values. That's why I'm so excited to be back in touch with those of you that I've learned from and worked with, and I'm just as excited to meet those of you who were partners before or after I hung up both my green and black aprons in 2005. It's hard to believe that it's been 15 years since I left Starbucks. I began my Starbucks learning journey back in a different century when the internet was new, my kids were kids, and all my hair was brown and still connected to my head. Well, now what's left of my hair is gray, my kids have kids, and the world is a very different place. But some things haven't changed. When I talk to former partners, I feel like I'm going back to the future, to a time when kindness and caring for others was cool, and we had each other's backs. I need to be with people who have those shared values. So that's what we're here to do. So let's jump right into the inspired stories of 5 incredible people. First, let me introduce our panelists today. We have we have Howard Behar was going to be here. We'll see if we catch up with him. Jessica Gleason, Chris Enskove, Denny Post, Chris Carr, and Brent Deniston. So first, bring us up to date. Tell us where you've been and what you've been doing since you left Starbucks. And Jessica, since you're all the way on the other side of the world, we're going to start with you.
Okay, let's see. So I left Starbucks to work with another fun company called Disney because they were going to keep me here in China, and I thought China was fascinating. Went on to work with a couple other companies in China, an Australian healthy Mexican concept that gives away a meal for every meal sold, and now am launching a beauty brand in China based on technology from the tanning business, but customizable. Just that.
And Jessica, how's it going in China right now? How are you feeling, and how are things today?
Yeah, I think every day we're seeing more and more confidence coming back. I was saying before we kicked off the call that a lot of the restrictions around being able to enter complexes have now been removed, and I now can get Starbucks delivered back to my front door. So life is back to normal in Shanghai almost.
Hey, Jessica, I heard a great story about how you got the coffee for this morning's tasting. You want to talk about it?
Oh, I went to the roastery last night to get the coffee, and then I realized they didn't actually sell Italian roast. So between the time I left the Starbucks roastery and got back to my home on the DD, I went onto the Starbucks app, ordered my whole bean coffee, and it actually beat me to my apartment.
That's awesome. That's dedication too. Good job.
Thank you.
Chris Carr, how about you? Bring us up to date. Where have you been? What have you been doing? And how are things going today?
Marty, what is going on? Man, things are fantastic. You know, I officially retired from Starbucks, and this will be my anniversary month, actually, May of 2019. But prior to that, I went on our, one of our wonderful benefits in terms of a coffee break, which was great. So since that period of time, it's kind of interesting, and I'll probably whisper this because if my wife hears it, she may get upset. But if you think about all the love and passion and the work that we did at Starbucks, we became, or at least I should say, I became pretty transactional in my day-to-day activity. If you think about it, and Christine, you probably know this better than anyone, we established kind of these routines, but the routines really put us in a position to be effective. So the biggest, I would say, benefit of me retiring, and I'll just tell this selected group of partners today, don't be surprised if you hear about me doing something else. I keep telling you that there's probably another run or two in me. But back to your question, the biggest surprise has been to disrupt that daily routine. I love it. I call it jumping off of the treadmill. And I think for all partners, be it a coffee break, be it retirement, be it semi-retirement, call whatever you want. I think we owe it to ourselves to jump off of that treadmill periodically. And what we've been focused on is filling our bucket. So real quickly, how have I been filling that bucket? It's interesting. Even this network today, what I've focused on is creating a network of purpose through board work. And part of that network of purpose is a portfolio of nonprofit and for-profit board work. On the nonprofit side, and this is what really probably fills my bucket the most, and it fills that void that was left after Starbucks. As many of you guys know, I love collegiate sports, and so I sit on the board of Howard University, and I also sit on the board of my alma mater, which is like the biggest joke to me because back in the 80s when I was going to that school, I would have never thought that they one day asked me to be a board of trustee. But
what school is that?
What was that, Marty?
What school is that?
The University of San Diego, which is a great private Catholic university. And what's great about that is it creates this sense of community for me in terms of I have an opportunity to help identify and develop and mentor the future leaders of our country. And also I get to stay connected to sports. And then on the business side, as many of you guys know, a little commercial break, I sit on the board of REI, which, Christine, I just read your blog and how you talked about being outside. And I totally believe and have experienced that a life outdoors is a life well lived. And so one thing I see, we're all indoors today, but during this period of time, if you can even carve out 10 minutes to get outside and get close to nature, at least personally for me, I'm at my best the closest I am with nature. So from a business standpoint, I've been with REI, which is a great company, very similar to Starbucks mission and purpose. And quite frankly, I used to run into quite a few former Starbucks partners. In addition to that, I've been doing some advisory work with a private equity firm. And then probably a hybrid of the two. Many of you guys know that I'm a prostate cancer survivor. And so I've been doing some consulting work with, believe it or not, the National Basketball Association and the Prostate Cancer Foundation, which is based out of Santa Monica, California. And PCF, they've raised over $900 million for prostate cancer research. And so look out next season, the NBA and PCF is going to do some big things, and your man had a little role to play in that. So Ben, I guess in summary, what I would say is I'm probably juggling more balls than I've ever juggled before, but just for shorter durations.
Cool. That sounds fabulous. Well, welcome. We're glad you're here. Denny Post. It's been a while since we've seen you. Denny, tell us about what's going on with you. Where have you been?
Hey, Marty. It's good to be here. Believe me. I left Starbucks in 2008 and spent a couple of years at T-Mobile. Did one of the Seattle rotations. Worked with Wendy Pinheiro and Jim Alling there. So some good Starbucks friends. Went from technology screaming back to restaurants because I vastly prefer feeding people. And spent 8 years with Red Robin, Yum, which is, of course, great Seattle brand based in Denver. So I've been living in Denver for the last just about 8 years. And I got unceremoniously fired last year by my board, which happens. And I'm looking for the next operating role, but enjoying some advisory work for a new firm called Reef Technology, which is in the business of setting up new ecosystems on urban parking lots and is a really cool business. And serving on 2 outside boards, Vital Farms, which is a B Corp out of Austin, Texas, and makes some outrageously wonderful eggs. Well, the hens make the eggs, but I'm on that board, and also Wyndham Destinations, which is the largest vacation ownership business in the world, and love it, and happy, and just so grateful to be connected to this amazing group of people.
Well, we're definitely glad you're here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome. Brent Deniston, tell us about where you are and what's been happening in your life.
Hi, everybody. I was at Starbucks from early 2001 to the end of 2014, so 14 years with the Green Apron. And I came to Starbucks after 8 years with Procter & Gamble. So 22 years under belt, large publicly traded companies, all operations and engineering roles. When I left Starbucks at the end of 14, I made a big change and I went into private equity held mid-sized sales, marketing, and innovation space. I joined a Chicago-based company that is still in the Starbucks ecosystem. They made Starbucks coffee cup sleeves and coffee travelers globally. And I led the global team across its customer base. I'm sure somebody on my team called on Red Robin while I was in that role, Denny. And spent 3.5 years with LBP, cutting my teeth in sales and marketing, as well as running our Poland and China operations. And I had an opportunity after 3.5 years there to step away and take a coffee break that I never took at Starbucks. And I took a page out of Chris's book. I had been working since I was 14 years old. I had never not worked, and my wife was panicked about how this was going to play out. And I think it took me less than a week to get into a new groove and be really, really comfortable with it. So I took my sabbatical for about 8 months, and then January last year, PMI Worldwide, a Seattle-based company, some of you would know it as Pacific Market International, recruited me in initially as a consultant to help basically guide through the process of outsourcing merchandise category management for Starbucks North America business from Starbucks to PMI. So I played a role architecting basically how we would set up organizationally and then how we'd win the business, and when the business was won, had to orchestrate the execution of that business. So I've been with PMI for about 16 months now. I lead global operations and engineering. I have an organization about 400 strong, spread between Seattle, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Rio, and Manila, and I'm having a blast.
And who is one of your biggest customers now?
Still in the Starbucks ecosystem. So before the call started, we were talking about collections. We make all of the merchandise for Starbucks North America, and outside North America, about 50% share of the merch in Europe and China and Asia Pacific. So Starbucks is a big part of our business, big part of my daily routine still.
It's hard to kick the habit.
It's hard, yeah.
And it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to our first meaty question. And this one is for all of you, so we'll come back to each of you. But transitioning from the Starbucks culture to other organizations has been a really difficult move for a lot of people. A lot of former Starbucks partners said that they were looking for that same magic that they had when they were at Starbucks. What was your transition to the rest of your career like? What was the most difficult thing you had to do, and how'd you make it work? So Brent, we still got you in the main screen, so we're going to come back to you. And Chris,
all right.
Chris Enskove will be to you in a minute.
All right. So I think just given that I left Starbucks for LBP, who's in the Starbucks ecosystem, and then to PMI, who's still in the Starbucks ecosystem, not necessarily intending that to be the case when I left Starbucks. Something that was true about both those companies is they built their early business actually with sales to Starbucks. So as LBP and PMI grew with Starbucks, culturally they set up very similar. They had very similar cultural dynamics for both good and bad. So my transition from Starbucks into LBP and then PMI felt very natural in many regards. It felt like going to Starbucks back in 2001, when the company was about a $3 billion business in 13 markets. What was challenging, I think, is the company I went to after Starbucks being mid-sized. It didn't have the resources, some of the specialist resources that I'd become accustomed to at Procter & Gamble and Starbucks, like OD resources, great project management, program management skills. So it created a lot of challenges. There were a lot of business systems, processes, and tools that were pretty immature relative to what I'd been accustomed to. But I guess the opportunity that came with that in a company that size is, as well at Starbucks, sometimes you can get into a big role at executive levels, but it's functionally defined and feels narrow after a time. In a company the size of LBP or even PMI, roles, the boundaries around roles can be blurred pretty easily. So there are a lot of opportunities actually to flex into space outside my functional responsibilities to make great change in the company. Things as simple as implementing SMART goals and leading an annual strategic planning process, to working on the compensation program holistically. So I had a lot of fun. There's a lot I took from Starbucks with me into those roles. The transition was largely easy because of the cultural similarities, but the opportunity for me, I think, sat with lack of some of the resources where I could lean in and leverage my experience.
Thanks, great. So we're going to go to Chris Enscope. Chris, you probably made one of the bigger changes. So first, catch us up on where you've been and what you've been doing, and then let's talk about your transition. Chris, we got you on mute.
Yeah, I'm not sure I feel very busy after I listened to all those reports, but yeah, I did make a big transition. I did jump off the treadmill, Chris Carr. I left Starbucks at the end of beginning of 2019. I joined a little company called Aegis Living. It's based here in Seattle, and we take care of older people. And it's not a terribly small company, pretty good size, mid-sized company. We develop and we own and we operate senior living and memory care communities up and down the West Coast. And I got to, I never in a million years imagined working in senior living. It just never even had crossed my mind for 5 seconds. And a friend of mine had said to me, "Hey, have you heard of this company? They're looking for someone to maybe lead it." And I laughed it off. I said, I love old people, but that's not my thing. And I went out and I spent probably 15 conversations with them, with the company and the founder, talking through kind of, just the culture and the business and how it's evolving. And what I couldn't figure out is why, given the demographics and what's getting ready to happen in the world. And if any of you paid attention to those numbers, it is incredible the numbers of people that we're getting ready to need to take care of that are older and are going to have a lot of issues. And we are woefully underprepared for that. So that alongside, really kicking the tires on the culture here, we have a wonderful, great culture that reminds me a lot of early Starbucks. I think Brent said that really well. I haven't pinned it to a year, but maybe like it's 2001. And we're trying to disrupt the industry, and that's what I'm up to. So my transition has been really, in many ways, I think easy. As I said, I kicked those tires really hard on the culture because leaping after 16 years is not an easy thing to do, and you're worried about it, right? And I remember, Marty, I haven't told you a story in a long time, but in my 3 C's class, you invited me to your house along with the rest of the 3 C's class, and we had dinner at your kitchen table. And that was one of my early experiences at Starbucks. And I still remember how I felt driving home that night thinking, good God, we're at somebody's house out in Sammamish, or I don't know if you still live in the same place.
Yep.
And I did the same thing here, right? We went to dinner at people's houses to get to know the team, and I asked for that. And it's shared values, right? And when you find that, it works. And the other thing I would just add is a little bit like Brent, the work is very different because you're not going from megalith, you're going from megalith to very much smaller operation with less resources. What's great is you can bring a lot of value because you see how to scale it and build it up and all that sort of thing. The problem is you got no one to help you do it. It is a very small operation. So it's learning how to be really smart with your resources. And frankly, I love it because I'm learning lots of new skills, I have to say.
So I'll throw out a question to all of you. Anybody remember what 3C stands for?
Coffee, culture, and connections.
All right, you get, there you go. Extra credit for that one. And big surprise, Howard Bihar has joined us.
All right, Howard.
HB, the man whose initials are the only thing you need to know. HB, how are you today?
I'm doing great. 105 degrees out here by the pool. It's not bad. A bottle of gin and some tonic, everything's going well.
Happy hour starting early?
Yeah, hey, my happy hour, when you retire, happy hour starts early every day. As soon as I feed the dogs, I have a drink.
So tell us about where you've been, what you've been doing since we last saw you.
Oh God, what have I been doing? Well, I've stayed focused on, what Starbucks has stayed focused on is to nurture and inspire the human spirit every day, beginning with myself first and then for others. So I plagiarized that from Starbucks when it first came out, and I've tried to live by that. And that's how I live my life. That's what I try to do every day. And most of the time it's little small things like picking up pieces of paper off the street and sometimes I get to be part of things like this. And I've had a great opportunity lately out of nowhere. All of a sudden, the license team from Starbucks wanted to have meetings with me. So I've met with every license team, I think, now in the country. And I got a chance to meet with yesterday with Ross Ann's team, which was really fun. So, you know, I always said, take a hand out of a bucket of water and see the hole you leave. But fortunately, they still remember me. They must have, I don't know what happened. They're all smoking something, I guess.
No, I don't think so. You've left a pretty large legacy.
Well, thank you. So I'm doing great. I feel good. I had some health problems that I've gotten over, and my wife, Lynn, has had some health problems that we've worked on together, and we've dealt with that. And I think that at this time of my life, I feel as good physically as I've ever felt. So that's good for being almost 76. And I miss my friend Orrin. I just have a picture. I have a picture. I look at Orrin every day and say hi to him. And, you know, he was probably my best friend outside of Dave Olson. And I miss him. I miss him a lot. But life has been good. I have no complaints. And I feel really grateful that I'm sitting here being able to do this in Palm Springs when there's a lot of people that can't put food on the table right now.
Exactly.
A lot of gratitude for that. And, you know, my job is to try to help as many people as I can through this.
So HB, you were the heart and soul of the organization for a really long time. What was your transition like after you left? It
was very difficult. You know, I used to say to everybody, you know, you're not Starbucks and Starbucks is not you. And because you're a whole person when you came to Starbucks, and you'll be a whole person when you leave Starbucks. And I fell into the trap myself. All the advice I gave everybody else, I didn't follow for myself. And I went through about 2 years of a real struggle, really, of depression after leaving Starbucks, because I was trying to figure out who I was and what I was here for. And there are points in my life that I thought, you know, maybe it's over. Maybe I've done what I can do in my life. And I was laying on my sofa here in Palm Springs one day, and I was reading a book, and I just kind of put the book down on my chest, and kind of tears came to my eyes, and I was really struggling at that point in time. And all of a sudden, these words came into my head out of nowhere, just out of the clouds. Howard, your life's work is still your life's work. And I repeated it to myself. Howard, your life's work is still your life's work. I just had to figure out how to do it, and how to make it productive, and how to feel good about myself, not being in a fast track like Starbucks was. And I was mad at Starbucks. I was mad at Howard because of all the layoffs that took place that I didn't think we needed to do. And so it took me a while to get through that. And that's when I wrote my second book, The Magic Cup, which is kind of it's fiction, but a lot of truth in it. So, you know, my life is good. I have not a complaint in the world. That, you know, the opportunity I had to work at Starbucks from a little tiny company. And I hear all you guys complaining, Brant and Chris, you know, the most fun is when you don't have any resources. When you have nothing, you got to figure out how to get them. And, you know, every night you go home and you sweat it out. In the middle of the night, you wake up and you have this idea and you write it down. And then the next morning, you can't figure out what you wrote down, you know. So you'll figure all that stuff out. And there'll be a day when you wish, God, we were back. I wish it was back when our desks were like an inch apart, which, as I remember when I first started at Starbucks, that's kind of what it was. So anyway, that's my life, and I'm sticking to it.
We're so happy about it. That's awesome.
Great.
So Jessica, you made a huge cultural change, not just an organizational change. How did you make the transition from Starbucks, and what's been like?
So I went actually from Starbucks over to Disney, and a bit like some of the other folks here, I was lucky that there was another Starbucks person there, and we were there to drive some change in a startup inside Disney called Disney English. So I think for me, probably the most interesting part of the change was when you found yourself at D2, not because your competencies around the work that you were trying to do, but because there was a whole nother language of that company used for success. And so trying to figure out how to bring the best of what Starbucks stood for into the work that you were doing, but be doing it within the context of another culture and the language, and respectfully of the language and history of that culture. Because as you can imagine, Disney also comes with a fairly rich history and language portfolio. So I remember at least once or twice being in that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I come with no skills. What am I doing here? And then realizing it was just a D2 moment and situational leadership for anyone who didn't get to do it, and being willing to stand back and raise your hand and ask for help and really seek out people who could help you understand how to frame your ideas in a way that the new culture would accept them. So I think that for me was probably the hardest part, but in a good way.
And now with the new organizations that you've got, how have you made that transition from what you learned at both Disney and Starbucks and brought that over to where you are now?
We actually talk a fair amount about it. One of the things I did was recruit some great talent from the China market to help me. But similarly, we took a lot of the pieces that we think were great about Starbucks. So our first day, we actually worked on the mission statement for Howard Bihar, and did that at a coffee shop about 5 blocks from here. And then have really spent time thinking about how we build the language that reflects the culture that we want to create and grow. So our name is Brighter Beauty. So we talk about how do we brighten up our toolbook or employee guide to make sure we're talking to people that are smart and bright in a way that is smart and bright for them. And then also I think reaching out for help. I have to do a little plug for my friend Hana Sue. She helped me create my own flavored water for my brand here, which I really appreciated. But I think that one of the great things about Starbucks people when you transition is you have the whole Starbucks network right at your fingertips. And that's been really helpful. So when you hit a place where you don't know what to do or you're doing something without resources, being able to call up folks and get their help.
That's super cool. Thanks.
You're
Chris
welcome.
Carr, how about you? How was the transition that you made, and what did you bring over?
Marty, it's an interesting question. I feel that my transition was relatively easy. And I say that because I was able to leverage a network of people to give me advice along the way. I can remember years ago, I was on a flight and it was this article that talked about how should we prepare for retirement? And it really kind of shocked me and it scared me because effectively what it said was you should have 7 hobbies or 7 areas of interest. And I was like, wow, 7? No way. And as I read through the body of the article, it talked about how some people will identify 2 or 3 things to do, but what they don't recognize is that they're pretty seasonal. And so what I walked away with from reading that article was, I need to start planting some transitional seeds. So ultimately, how can I make that transition? And it's great to have Howard Bihar on the call today because as many of you guys know, I worked at ExxonMobil for 18 years prior to Starbucks. And so I reached out to former colleagues who had retired at ExxonMobil, and I picked up the phone and I called Howard Bihar. And I asked him, would he be willing to meet me for breakfast just to kind of talk about life after Starbucks? And the reason why he was one person who I asked is because not only how effective he was as a partner with Starbucks and successful, but he had done other things that I had an interest in. He was heavily involved with board work. He was heavily involved, and I believe also his daughter with the University of Washington. And at that time, I wanted to get into that academic space. And so had breakfast with Howard, and it's interesting how his words of wisdom can motivate you and inspire you and have this sense of belief in yourself that if that's what your aspiration is to do it, he's like, well, shit, get up and do it, right? You know, but he also gave me helpful hints in terms of how do you start to build those relationships. And so when I actually left Starbucks, you know, I would say I probably had over 7 things that I was involved in. And so I really, you know, would like to thank him in front of all the partners here today for his advice. And his advice was not always on how to be a more effective leader, but it was how do you become a better person and how do you make an investment in yourself and believe in yourself. And I think that's one thing that's really strong about this network with former partners of Starbucks. We have that common bond, and that bond is all about the relationships that we've established with each other. So Howard, brother man, I didn't thank you. Well, I think I picked up the tab for that breakfast, but
Thank you enough
for your advice. Thank you.
That's a great story. Thanks, Chris. So Denny, you've gone on to some very different things as well and some different organizations. What was your transition like?
Well, part of it is I was at Starbucks for a very short period of time. I was actually only there 15 months, which, you know, I look back and out of my entire career, I would say that was probably 15 of the most profound learning months that I had in all of the things that I've done. And I went, when I made the transition from Starbucks to T-Mobile, I had committed to my son, whom I'd moved cross country from Miami to Seattle, that I wouldn't move him again. He'd get through high school in Seattle. I wouldn't change anything. And so I took the opportunity to go work with somebody I'd known from my prior lives at Yum Brands at T-Mobile. And I went from, you know, I'm a consumer marketer at heart, right? And I went from Starbucks, where there's this deep affinity and relationship between the Starbucks customer, the Starbucks guest, and to an environment where at T-Mobile, the affinity exists between the person and their device, not the carrier that provides the service. And in fact, if anything, the carrier is a point of pain. And that transition was challenging for me as a marketer because I had been so fortunate to have such a deep well of equity to tap into at Starbucks to do the work that we did in a very short period of time as a team. But, you know, I found that we were able to find some differences. We drove some transparency and really worked hard to reposition T-Mobile in a way, and full credit to the folks who took over after I left, because they took it even further and did some remarkable things there. But I think the biggest thing for me was my learning from Starbucks was that no matter how challenging an environment you're in, you still stand as a role model and as somebody who has impact on other people, and the importance and the power of being there and being present and engaging and connecting with the people around you. And you can take that to any work environment, any environment you go into, you can have an impact on those around you. And I certainly know that we all have seen that. Howard's been mentioned. Jim Donald is the reason I came to Starbucks. He had a very, very strong impact on me in a very short period of time. So I would say that was my transition, and that was my learning.
That's excellent. Thank you. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's go on to another question. HB, we're going to come back to you and start with you. Everybody looks at you as the heart and soul of what Starbucks became, but how did your time at Starbucks change you? What did you learn? How have you used those changes in your life to become the person that you've become?
Well, one giant one was this, you know, never had I been with any organization that got as large as Starbucks did so fast. And I had to grow. I had to think about things in a different way because you don't control it. You know, we didn't do it. It's the people of Starbucks that did it. And how was I going to have an impact? And I had to think about what was the impact I wanted to have. And you know, my life has been around people, even at an early age. And so, you know, that was a pretty easy decision for me because I realized that we weren't in the coffee business serving people, but we really truly were in the people business serving coffee. And so, but that, you know, you could say that in a small group and maybe get it over, but how are you going to do it across a country, across multiple countries, in thousands of people, and get people to believe in it? And I learned that you get tired of the message long before your people get tired of the message. And you have to give the same speech over and over and over again, maybe using different words with different ways of putting it across. But basically, it had to be the same thing, because I think it was Jessica that talked about words matter. And words do matter. And the words that we used at Starbucks, and the words that, like that little saying about people at coffee, that became a driving force. And I didn't know that it would become that way, but it drove me. And it was a reminder of me every day what business we're in. And so I kind of really worked hard at being disciplined about not so much focusing on the numbers. I mean, I was a pretty good numbers person, but you know, and a business person, I knew how to make money in retail, but primarily focused on the culture of the organization. and the people of the organization. And I felt that once when I got into Starbucks International, I'd had zero experience. I'd bought furniture, in China to bring to the US to sell before, in Italy, but I had never had to sell anything into another country. And I just went with what I believed in, that it was about the people there as much as it was about the people here, that it didn't make any difference what country you were in, what the color of the people's faces, what religion they practiced, what food they ate. It was still about people. And so I tried to drive that, and fortunately it worked, and wherever we had failures outside of North America, it was always because the partner we chose didn't get that. They said they did, and we thought they did, but they didn't. And every partner that we've had to replace or that has struggled is always because they didn't understand that it really was about the people. I can remember back Singapore, which was probably my biggest mistake. I remember reading this article by the chairman of Sony, and he was using this analogy. He says, take a piece of paper, before you do a deal, take the deal, crumble it up, and put it in your mouth and swallow it. If it gives you any sense of indigestion, don't do the deal. And I got indigestion, but I sucked in. I sucked into this person that had lots of money, they had experience in quick service, and they had control over a lot of real estate. And I sucked in, and I thought they would get the people stuff, and they didn't. And so it took us 8 or 9 years. I think Troy Elstead finally figured that out and finally bought them out. And within almost instantaneously, Starbucks took it over, and the thing turned around and started to grow fast again. And if there was ever, there's been lots of examples of that in Starbucks, but that was probably one of the greatest examples I've ever seen. The singular change was leadership. That was a singular change, and the values that leadership aspired and lived by. And that's what made it work, and that's what made Starbucks work. And that's, nobody will ever convince me any other way. It's always been about the people. It will always be about the people. And anytime we took our sight off the people, we got in trouble and we screwed things up. And so, that's probably the biggest lesson I learned. You go across cultures, you have to figure out a way to tell the story. You got to be willing to keep telling the story, no matter how bored you get with the story or how tired you get of telling the story. People never get tired of it. And that's global. That's worldwide. It's in your families. It's anywhere. Your kids will tell you they're tired of it, but trust me, when they turn 24, they're going to repeat exactly the same stories you told them. And you're going to have to say, geez, that's interesting.
HB, you've been a quote machine for a long time. One of the quotes that I remember you saying, and I'm pretty sure it was you said, you got to have values to add value. That's right. I love that one. That's how I learned. For those of you that were in my office, you remember all the quotes I had on the walls? I don't have them in this office, but I have them up in Seattle. I have 200 quotes on my wall. Every one of those quotes has meaning to me. I learned something that came along at the time that I needed it. It's either somebody gave it to me or I read it. Two of my favorite ones, I'll take 1 second here, are only the truth sounds like the truth. When I was leading, the first time I was ever president of a company, it got in trouble and we had to have a layoff. It was the first time that I didn't even know what the word meant, And what happened was we left the layoff list on the copier. And somebody picked it up at night, and it was a Friday night. By the time Friday night came, everybody knew what was going on in the company. And so we called the team together, and half the team said, well, just deny it. Just say it wasn't really going to happen. It was just some pre-planning we're doing in case someday we had to do it. But we were ready to do it. And my administrative assistant said to me, Lori Christmas, I'll never forget her. She looked at me in the face and she said, Howard, only the truth sounds like the truth. And so we told the truth, and it was amazing what happened. The second one is one that I was reading this book one day, and I had all the same issues that every man has, just about. We all want to provide solutions versus listening. And I was no different than that. My wife was always at me, and one night I came home, and she was getting her PhD, and she was
talking about all her stuff. And I said, well, why don't you do this? And she just looked at me, and just smiled. And I realized, uh-oh, I'm back at it again. So I was reading this book, and there was this 2-word quote, one of my favorite quotes ever: compassionate emptiness. Compassionate emptiness. Full of compassion, but empty of ideas or solutions. In other words, listen and care. And that's it. And from that little quote, I changed my habits for my kids and for my wife.
I love it. Thanks. Great stories. So let's go to Jessica. Jessica, how did your time at Starbucks change you?
So I spent so much of my growing up life at Starbucks. I always say, and I think Doug Koob and I talk about this, that we're very fortunate to have grown up with the company. So I think it shaped so much of my leadership. I was reflecting a little bit on what Howard Behar was saying on Starbucks International and our lack of experience as a team when we started it. And it just had me thinking about one of the things that you take away from your time at Starbucks is, one, not to be afraid of a blank sheet of paper. So all of us out there who are running around the world didn't know what we had done. We didn't necessarily know any less than anyone else at the building at that point, but we certainly didn't know how to do international business. And so having the confidence to go out and do it. And I think that was in large part driven by the fact that Howard was so trusting with all of us, as far as, I think our call to action was "don't F it up," or something along those lines. But trusting in hiring people to go out and do things on behalf of an organization. And whether that's, and I do a lot of that with my team here, where they actually came from larger organizations and are now, heading up a function, and they'll come and ask a question. And I'm like, I'm pretty confident that you guys actually have a great solution to this. And so being able to demonstrate that trust in somebody else, and as a result of that, having them come up with solutions that you couldn't even imagine. So Andrew Nathan and I, who I know is on the call, talk about going around the world with a book that was half full of blank paper, talking to people from businesses, trying to convince them that we were a grown-up company when we were really kind of building the bridge as we were driving across it, for sure. So,
but that was really the fun part.
Pardon?
That was the fun part.
It was totally the fun part. No resources, no problem. Make it scrappy. So, but I think taking that ability to trust people and really be uncompromising in looking for the right people to bring into your organization. I talk a lot with folks here because people say, this isn't possible in China, or that's not possible in China. And I'm like, are you kidding? We're in a country of 1.3 billion people in a city of 26 million. If you know exactly what you're looking for in talent and you're uncompromising in it, you will find that person and they will be so happy to be part of your organization. So I think that would be what I took away, among many other things, and a lot of great friends.
That was the best part. Chris Carr, how about you? How did Starbucks change you?
Wow, Marty, there's been so many things. If I had to give you the short version, it would be the power of engagement and personal development from an emotional standpoint versus just skill and competency. And what's been kind of one of the biggest takeaways for me, and I've shared this even with my kids, is I wouldn't trade my experience at ExxonMobil for anything in the world. Those 18 years were phenomenal. But what Starbucks helped me become is a better husband, a better father, and a better leader. And so my key takeaway is Starbucks created an environment where you could bring your whole self to work, and it was really interested in developing you as a person first, a leader second, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And that has become part of my repertoire in terms of, how I look to help inspire and help others reach their aspiration. And it falls into alignment with that old cliche is, people don't remember what you necessarily say, but they remember how you made them feel. And I know, and I've told this story a gazillion times, and he's probably never heard it, But one of the main reasons why I came to Starbucks, or the main reason, was Jim Alling. And part of it was a conversation, believe it or not, when I was at ExxonMobil, I was doing some travel. Me and Jim were trying to connect so I could make a trip to Seattle, and we kept missing each other. I called home from the road to talk to my wife and would always check in, ask her how her day was, how are the kids doing? And she said, hey, Jim called today. And I said, oh, wow, did he leave his number? I've been trying to get in touch with him. And she said, yeah, you know, but Jim was talking about his kids, and he was talking about how one of his kids has asthma, like our daughter Alea. And I was like, Jay, did she get his number? And she said, yeah, and by the way, do you know that Jim used to live in California? And I was like, Jay, did she get his number? And she went on, and I was like, Jackie, how long did you talk to Jim? She said, oh, for a couple minutes. I said, no, seriously, how long did you talk to Jim? She said, an hour. It freaking blew me away. And so when I finally had an opportunity to meet Jim, had never talked to him, when I walked into his office, it was almost like if we were college roommates because of that emotional connection he made with my wife and the power of that. I would run through a wall for Jim. And so that's been probably my biggest lesson, is how do you help people reach their aspiration, and how do we help each other develop emotionally and not just from a skill standpoint.
I think Jim Alling had a big influence on a lot of people, besides the fact that he does a mean Elvis impersonation.
Yeah.
I miss that, I really do.
You know what? First of all, Chris, thank you for sharing that story. I had forgotten about that conversation, but you just made my day. And I'm so glad that Jackie helped get you into Starbucks, because you've been a great partner for the company. And Marty, I have since found out that my Elvis impersonation is not very good. So thank you for pushing me on stage to do that almost every single time.
But it doesn't have to be good to be good.
This is true. This is true. It felt good to me.
It felt good to everybody. It was awesome. And you look awesome, by the way. Nice hair.
Yeah, I saw that. I told Alex Pentland I got a lot of hair plugs done for me. But
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah,
I'll
have to get your.
Why do we have to put up with that, Chris? He's got the hair we know.
Hey.
Don't start, HB. Only the truth sounds like the truth.
Wait till social distancing is eliminated. I'm coming over, Jim, with the buzzers.
Can't wait. We'll go Mohawk first.
Yeah.
I'll pay to see that. So let's keep moving on. So let's go to Chris Ensko. Chris, what was your proudest accomplishment as a partner? You had some really interesting opportunities. What do you remember the most?
Yeah, I got really lucky. I had so many fun things. Two stick out, and I'll only say one because it was the Nirvana moment when the European team, we signed the relationship with the family in Italy to open the Italian market, which everyone said never could be done. And we got it done. And I remember signing that day with Howard and just thinking, God, I hope this is right. I knew it was, but at that moment, I think actually the thing I'm most proud of, and it came up earlier, and actually all these conversations, HB was talking about it in the Singapore partner. So in Europe, we were getting ready to open we wanted to open a market in sub-Saharan Africa, and it was going to be South Africa. We thought that was the best opportunity. And we were doing business in Morocco, but we wanted to do business in sub-Saharan Africa. We went down and we looked at the market and we met with a bunch of partners. And I mean, everybody that has dealt with international knows these partners kind of look and act roughly the same, right? They're typically people who've had experience in other businesses, and they've got big footprints in these markets. And we met with these guys who just one day, and I won't go into great detail about them. They ultimately were the partner we selected and have done a remarkable job of opening, putting Starbucks on the map in South Africa. And by the way, that was never going to be a giant market. It wasn't about the size, the scale. It was just about bringing Starbucks values to that market. And honestly, I remember sitting with this guy that day, and he was out Starbucksing Starbucks. I remember saying that to him as we were talking about how to, create Starbucks in South Africa. You know, we were going to go hire all the baristas from the townships that surrounded this neighborhood, and we were going to give them excellent training. No one would ever leave, and they'd all have these careers. And, you know, it's funny when you have an instinct about who can, you know, it can equally be frustrating, right? You'd oftentimes have to earn your way into Starbucks when we hired somebody new. It frustrated me when I got to Starbucks. I didn't know if I'd ever get over that hump. And then once you were in the family, you respected the fact that you had to do it. But as an outsider, you have no idea how it works, right? And when you meet somebody that, you know, you just do this with, right, and you get it. And I found that family in my new business. You just in your gut know it's the right thing, and it all works. It's not hard. It just happens, and it's fun, and it's easy. And that's when you know you got the right partner. And that's what I'm probably most proud of, because I think we really impacted some lives that needed to be impacted there. And we met many of those folks on trips down there, and that business is doing well today. And I was really, really proud of that, because we were allowed to do some things differently, and we picked the right people, and I loved it. And just such a beautiful place and beautiful people.
So you had a lot of impact on a lot of people. How did the organization change you? Well,
you know, it changes you in quiet moments, right? I think, you know, it's because you know, it's funny. A lot of people say to me, you know, boy, senior living is so different than serving coffee. And I go, not really. I mean, we are in the service business. So lots of things that we do here are exactly what we did at Starbucks. And I find myself, I mean, my job every day here at this support center is to support the field. I mean, I've heard that language somewhere before. And I find myself, I'll pull out an old HB quote, although it could be Dave Olson. I don't know the vintage. But, you know, everything you do matters. I know you've heard that before. And I feel like, you know, what we learned at Starbucks was everything you do matters. And we're all kind of in this together, and it was a very fair place. I tell people here often that, you know, I honestly, in my 16 years there, I never ever saw anyone do something that I thought truly lacked integrity. It was the wrong thing to do. And I carry that with me all the time. I mean, at the end of the day, we're missing integrity in a lot of places in the world today. And I try to, you know, I've got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I try to, you know, we're all trying to figure out how to bring them up and do the right thing and teach them how to be good people. And you know, we all struggle. Sometimes I get it right, and, you know, sometimes I get it wrong. But at the end of the day, integrity is the most important thing. And I got that at Starbucks. I think that's something we were very good at. And it's really led my life in many ways. Because if you don't have that, how can you have a relationship with someone, be it in business or in life or whatever? So that fits high on my list. And again, it goes back to everything matters. Everything you do matters. Whether somebody's watching you or not, you got to go home at night and look at your kids and look at your wife and look yourself in the mirror. And that's what matters. And I got that at Starbucks. I believe that.
I couldn't agree more. We learned what really matters. And these days, especially, that makes a big impression on us. Denny, how about you? How did Starbucks change you? You were there, you said 15 months. How did it change you?
Yeah, I was a partner for only 15 months, but it was 2007, 2008, which, as you might remember, was a time of tremendous upheaval for the country, for the economy. Starbucks was facing competition that it had never seen before. I remember taking our team to go up and do dine-arounds, what we call dine-arounds, or in that case, it was more sip-arounds, with consumers at the first McDonald's McCafe to see what was going on up in Detroit. And it was actually to get some sense of what was happening there. And we heard people talk about how it would never match Starbucks, but the convenience that it offered. As you'll remember, those are the days before Starbucks had drive-thrus, except one on, as I remember, Mercer Island, and the ones I saw in Japan. And it was basically saying convenience was going to win out. So I think, you know, the biggest thing for me was weathering that time. I learned a lot about resilience and the importance of accepting the facts of what's going on, the importance of adopting a growth mindset and being willing to change and learn from everything that comes your way, and whether that's personally or as a business. And those are really critical components that will serve me my entire career. In the business, I'm really proud of what we did as a team. We launched Pike Place Roast in record time, which I know for some was anathema because it was such an accessible coffee, but it's created a lot of value for Starbucks over the years. And it's a real point of pride for me in terms of how everybody worked together to make that happen. And I think of all the people that contributed, Michelle Goss, a whole lots of folks that made it really make sense for the company. And that was a point of real pride. So I'd say resilience, I learned a lot about that. And I learned a lot about how to make an impact in a very short period of time.
And Denny, I don't know if I ever told you this, but this is a small world story. So I was the Senior Director of Talent Acquisition for T-Mobile.
Oh, you were?
And I actually recruited you to T-Mobile.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's right. With Robert Dodson. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, Marty, that's right. I forgot about that. Yep.
That's a small world story that comes full circle. That's pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate every opportunity I've been given. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, that was a great hire. We were very happy to bring you on. So Brent, how about you? How did your time at Starbucks change you?
Yeah, when I my success at Procter & Gamble, the 8 years I was there in supply chain, it was all about driving consistency into the operation to give you a platform then to continuously improve upon. And to do that, you needed processes, you needed metrics, you needed tools, you needed a cadence or a routine. And so after 8 years of that at Starbucks, Procter & Gamble, I decided to come to Starbucks. Rich Soderberg recruited me. And Rich is like, hey, that productivity improvement work you did, this is my version of the story, that you did at P&G, come do that at Starbucks. And Starbucks was such a different organization. I would say for the first 10 months I was with the company, every other night I was driving home thinking I made a terrible decision coming here. But I got to a spot, I got a win under belt, and started to have impact. And years later, I think this was during the recession, and I think I just remember distinctly Howard Schultz getting up in front of I think it was an open forum, and saying he's not a big fan of systems, processes, and metrics. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it, right? But how Starbucks changed me it's a little bit similar to Chris's story. So I found a way to bring that discipline into Starbucks, but also lead from the heart. And I think at Procter & Gamble, the idea of emotion coming into a decision-making process, the heart coming into that, was not something that was commonly embraced, certainly not in a factory, and not in a technical center filled with engineers. But at Starbucks, I learned how to lead from the heart, be comfortable leading from the heart, and meld that with this process management discipline background to be effective. I think as a result of that, I was only not a more effective leader at Starbucks, but I've been a better leader, a better professional, and a better human being in general.
But you would think the disciplinary side of the data and systems and the leading from the heart go in opposite directions, don't they?
I think you got to find it. I think good leaders find a way to bridge the two. But yeah, they can be antithetical to each other, and you've got to find a way to bridge the two. And I think where that bridging happens, it's personal relationship, personal connection.
Thanks. That's really great. So let's go on to another question. We all need heroes these days, especially during uncertain times like we have today. Who are your heroes today? So Jessica, let's start with you. Who are your heroes today?
So and this is not to kiss up to anyone on this, but I think that Chris, honestly, you've done such an amazing job leading the way and really showing folks in the Seattle area how to put all the discipline in to protect people, but also bring, I guess, the love of life and lightness and making sure that people's human hearts are taken care of as well as their health. So this week and during COVID-19, mine is Chris Enskoff. So genuinely.
Nice. You are very, very kind. Thank you. That's what we're trying to do.
Completely genuine.
You're doing a great job.
Chris Carr, how about you? Who are your heroes today?
Yeah, Marty, and you know, it's interesting. I've kind of grown up a big sports fan and have a lot of respect for what individuals do, but I typically hitch my wagon to movements because it's a collective effort of a collective group of individuals. But if I had to name two individuals today in no particular order, one would be the president of Howard University, Dr. Wayne Frederick, who left a promising practice as a physician to come back to the university that he graduated from to elevate, its performance. But not only has he done a phenomenal job in terms of taking care of students and faculty, but he's gotten a lot of press on the national stage in terms of speaking from a physician standpoint around the disparity of how this disease is impacting the African American community. And it just blows me away when you think about in the US, African Americans are only 13% of the population, but it's over 60% of the fatalities associated with this disease. And so he would be at the top of that list. And the other person who I think is just amazing is Dr. Fushi. I think from a bipartisan standpoint, that's the type of leadership that this country needs. And he's so fact-based, but he can relate. I've seen him speak, of course, to governmental diplomats, but also I've seen him speak to the millennials. And I've seen him speak and be interviewed by like Steph Curry. So his ability to deliver his message across a diverse group of citizens, I think is amazing. And I think, he should be one day coined as a hero for what he's doing for this country today.
I think history will look back on it that way too. I agree. Yeah. HB, how about you? Who are your heroes today? Hello.
Myself. Still, Obama is still one of my great heroes. I just love that guy. And, he's, just smart, and has got great values and lives by those values. I still have a same hero as one that I had that was my first mentor, a guy named Jim Jensen, who, when I was in my early 20s, gave me the pamphlet about servant leadership, the Leader as Servant by Robert Greenleaf. And probably, the person that I respect the most is my wife. She's just gone through a bout of bladder cancer, and to watch her deal with that, and she's an oncology social worker, so she knew all the bad stuff that could happen. And to watch her just tough it out at the same time I'm sick. I was supposed to be taking care of her, and she's taking care of me at the time that she's sick. And she's just been incredible and unbelievable strength, like, nobody else I know. And she's done it. And through it all, not one complaint, not woe is me, not why did this happen to me, nothing. Just dealing with it and dealing with me at the same time. So, those are my heroes.
Cool, thank you. Well, so let's move on to another question, go in a totally different direction altogether. What profession other than your own would you like to try? So Denny, we'll start with you. If you could pick your new career and make a pivot to do something else, what would it be?
Well, it kind of relates a little to the heroes question before, because I was actually a journalism major in college, and had no expectation or intention of ending up going into business or being a CEO, but the opportunity to be a journalist, I think today it's another golden age of journalism. I love the way that particularly the print media are holding our leaders accountable and exposing in all cases what's going on. So I think I would have been a print journalist. I would have followed that Woodward and Bernstein that inspired me in the 70s and down that path, and been able to do that today. I think that would be a terrific place to be.
Thanks. Brent, how about you? If you had a choice of what you want to do next, what would it be?
I would go full-time into leadership development coaching. When I was on my sabbatical break, I had nothing but time for many months. And I was sitting in the backyard in Issaquah one day over a glass or two of wine, and I thought, I'll look through my LinkedIn network. I want to see how many people I've recruited, coached, managed, promoted, developed over my career that are now in executive level leadership roles. And I think I lost count somewhere around 40. And I think back over my legacy, my career, the things that I'm most proud of. It all comes down to people and having impact on people. So I think I'd go full time into leadership development coaching.
Okay, great. So one more question before we wrap it up, and we may have a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. So those of you that may have questions for any of our panelists, if you'd like to put it on the chat line, we'll see if we can get to a couple of them. And at the very least, we will answer the questions on our Green Apron Alliance platform after this webcast, which is being recorded, and we'll get back to you with the answers from the panelists. So I'm gonna throw this up as a toss-up question, and any of you can jump in and answer it. But if heaven exists, what do you want to hear when you arrive at the pearly gates? Brent, I can still see you, so let's go to you. What do you think?
Well, I think carrying on with what my other job would be, I would love to hear when I crossed through those pearly gates that I had a lasting positive impact.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know, Marty, my short, quick answer would be laughter from the ones who have preceded me. That you know, their time on this planet was short. Because I think I'm a pretty positive person, but one thing that really gets me going is hearing laughter at all ages. It's just so fulfilling. So I would love to reconnect with those who I lost and hear their laughing voices.
I think mine is going to be, mine is going to be, God, that's a hell of a head of hair you've got. And you're going to love the coffee here. No, I think, you know, the truth is it would be, you know, you set out to serve, nurture, and inspire the human spirit, and you did.
Can't ask for more than that. Anybody else?
I'd love to hear happy 100th birthday, because I want to get there.
Jess, how about you?
I was thinking, of all the people that you get a chance to have coffee with. So great conversations with people who inspired you over what I'm hoping is universally accepted as the world's best coffee. For me, Sulawesi.
I like it. HB, we just got a thread on the chat that says, HB, you don't need to wait for the pearly gates to hear that. You did it.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. Well, thank you all for a really great conversation. And really, this was just a fun conversation. That was the purpose of it. We live in a very serious world today, but it was so fantastic catching up with people that we respect and value. And it was really interesting. I was talking to Christine Day this morning. And Christine, and I told her, I said, of all the partners that I've been talking to recently, it feels like no time has gone by. And for some people that I haven't spoken to, it's been more than 15 years since we've seen each other or talked to each other. But yet, as soon as we get back into a conversation, it feels like no time has gone by and we haven't skipped a beat. And Christine said, it's like we were in high school together. We're the high school graduating class that have gone on, grown up, done bigger and better things, but we've never forgotten each other, and we always look for each other in times of good and in times of bad. So this is fantastic. And for those of you that are thinking about becoming members of the Green Apron Alliance, that's what it's all about. This is why we're here to do this, is to bring us back together. And as I said before, it's not just to play the greatest hits, getting the band back together, but it's about what can we do together and how do we continue to inspire the human spirit and go forward and do even better things going forward. And so I just want to put in a plug, and I ask you to check the Green Apron Alliance platform for this, but we have 3 other webcasts this month, and we're calling it May We Move Forward. And so today was really the table setter, and we have 3 other ones for the rest of the month, really very timely, talking about what's your pivot. Next Thursday evening, we're going to talk about what's your pivot. After that, we're going to talk about the job market in a post-COVID world. And then at the end of the month on the 28th, we're going to have former Starbucks partners and current CEOs talking about tough decisions that they have to make in order to be able to keep their employees and their businesses safe. So look for that. We really hope that you're going to join us. This has been fantastic. I look forward to seeing all of you and hearing from all of you in the days and weeks to come. Please stay well, stay safe. I'm going to pass it back over to Christine.
I don't have anything else to say other than thank you so much, Marty. You did a fantastic job, and a thanks to our panelists for so many heartfelt memories, but also the kind of the spirit within which we all are carrying forward our Starbucks experience. I'm definitely inspired, and it's great to see a lot of people's faces. So as Marty said, get on the connection engine, more to come. We look forward to sharing some of the things that we've also got planned for later in the year. And everybody have a great night. Jessica, have a great day.
How about setting a little goal that everybody that's been on this call, there's 96 people, everybody's got to recruit 10 other Starbucks alumni to bring them on into this association. That would be fantastic. We have an opportunity to do something really great with this, and I'd like to see us do it. And so that's going to take a commitment from all of us to reach out to the people that we know and bring them along.
You got it. We got it.
Okay.
All right, everybody, have a great night. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.